exciting part is right there parked next to us. That's a Cybertruck. We're gonna check it out. Good morning, everyone. We're about ready to start our third leg of our big 3,000-mile road trip from Iowa to Alabama to Florida and now back home, about 1,500 miles. We're sitting here in Venice, Florida. Been here with some friends. We've been plugged into a 110-volt outlet because we had time, and that's all they had available. And we were able to get our car over the last day or so up from about 30%. We're currently sitting at 82%, and we're still charging. All right, here is our rough plan. We're sitting down here in Venice. We're going to make our way up to Orlando, and then from there tomorrow, we're going to make our way up to the Atlanta, Georgia area, and then the big long trip home through Chattanooga, Nashville, St. Louis, and then making our way up into the Cedar Rapids, Marion, Iowa area. So that's what we got ahead of us. It's going to be a long journey. You're going to see the good and the bad, and hopefully no ugly. So let's hit the road. Just landed in Orlando at the Orlando, Florida Palm Parkway Supercharger. Took us a lot longer than it should have to get here because the I-4 is frankly a parking lot. It's terrible. That last leg, 141 miles, 290 watt hours per mile. So our first leg of this journey back home is starting out on a good note. So we're gonna get plugged in. We're gonna be here for about, well, we're here for a little while. We're gonna be here all day today. So I just have a little time to kill right now, and I'm gonna charge for a little while, and we're just gonna see how much we can get. And from there, we'll keep on moving down the road. It's sitting here about 20 minutes. I am up to 86%. That's good enough in my books for today. If we need to charge, we need to charge on the way out of town. Not sure where that's going to be, but we'll find out a little bit later. So right now I am headed to the hotel to get checked in. Next time you'll probably see me is when we're getting ready to check out of the hotel to make our way north up to the Georgia area. Good morning. Bright and early. Day 2 of our big road trip from Venice, Florida, all the way back home to Iowa. And today is going to be a relatively long day of about 500 miles to get to the Atlanta area. So we're up early, mostly because traffic out of Orlando can be a little dicey and will probably still be a little dicey. And we're going to be rolling into Atlanta probably right around rush hour on a weekday, which isn't good, but can't avoid it. So let's take a look at where we're going today. According to the nav computer, at least right now, and this is all subject to change based on how things go, we are going to go to Gainesville, then Valdosta, Georgia, and then Fort Valley, Georgia, and then to our final destination in the Atlanta area. So it says if we left right now, and it's 6:30 in the morning, not quite ready to go, we get there at 3:02. Now, I don't think the Tesla nav does a very good job of factoring in traffic and how well that's going to impact things or how bad it's going to impact things, but we'll see. We're hoping to shoot to get there around the dinner time mark, so that's our goal. That's why we're up and going so early. So if you're ever interested in road tripping very long distances in an electric vehicle, especially a Tesla, watch this video and I'll take you through all the good and the bad and whatever. But let's hit the road. Got to our first stop of the day, Alachua, Florida. It did reroute us from this morning. Efficiency must have been a little bit better than expected, so we got a little bit further down the road. That last leg, 148 miles, 301 watt hours per mile, and it says we're going to be here about 15 minutes before we head down to our next stop, which is currently Valdosta, Georgia. So Overall, I think we made a good decision about leaving as early as we did, even though I don't particularly care leaving this early. But we did avoid most of the traffic, not all of it. There was a bit of a parking lot about 20 miles in the middle of nowhere on the turnpike in Florida, but we got through it. We're here, and check in further down the road. Just pulled into Valdosta, Georgia supercharger. That last leg was only 90 miles, 320 watt hours per mile. We were originally going to go to a charger a little bit down the road, but it rerouted us here because the way here, we were passed by a Cybertruck, and that man was ripping it, and we were trying to keep up, and we were going maybe a little faster than we should and burning a little bit more electrons than we should, so it had to stop here. Hoping the Cybertruck would have been here when we got here, but it wasn't. But we're gonna get plugged in. We're gonna be here for about 25 minutes, and then we'll be on our way. We made it to Fort Valley, Georgia supercharger, 130 miles, 319 watt hours per mile, but that's not the exciting part. The exciting part is right there parked next to us. That's the Cybertruck. We're gonna check it out. Well, we're at the supercharger in Gray, Georgia. It's only 33 miles since our last stop, and it was 339 watt hours per mile. And we're only stopping just to switch drivers, use the restroom, because we overcharged greatly at the last supercharger because there was just a distraction there, which was the Cybertruck. And the people there that own the Cybertruck were super nice, super friendly, very accommodating, and the hype is real as far as this thing attracting attention. So many people stopped and did everything that they needed to do. There was even a police car that came in rolling in hot, slammed on his brakes right by the Cybertruck like they're gonna jump out and arrest the guy, but they really just wanted to roll down the windows and take a picture real quick. So we're here, we're gonna charge for literally a couple of minutes, and then we're gonna be on our way. Right, we are all charged up, supercharged, we'll call it, 95%. And the reason why I charge so high is because we have about 88 miles to get to our destination, which is outside Atlanta. There are no superchargers in the area. We're gonna be there for a little over a day, and we need time to get to driving around while we're there, and then figure out where the next supercharger is before we head home tomorrow afternoon. And tomorrow is gonna be another long day. All right, so we're gonna get unplugged, and my wife says I need a new catchphrase at the end of this, so she created a list of all the things that I can say. So this time I'm gonna say, let's keep on trucking. Hi everyone, I'm on my big road trip going from Florida all the way back to Iowa, and I'm in the Atlanta, Georgia area, and overnight I had version 12 FSD beta pushed to my car. So of course I installed it. So we're going to be taking our first drive with FSD beta out of Atlanta. I don't know if that's a good idea, but come along for the ride. right, we just used FSD Beta 12.3 all the way from our Atlanta area to the supercharger in Adairsville, and it worked pretty much flawlessly. Again, if you want to see that video, check it out. It's a separate video on just that particular drive. But that last leg, since before the Atlanta area, was 169 miles, 282 watt-hours per mile, which is fantastic for this car. And even just the last drive of 81 miles was 274. Just crazy good. So we're going to go ahead and get plugged in here. We're going to be here for about 20 minutes or so before we make it on down the road. So check in then. So as we're sitting here trying to plot our way home, we're sitting down here south of Chattanooga, and we're going to make our way up just north of Nashville here for the night. And for tomorrow, you always want to plug in the next stop, and we actually just plugged in our home to see what it's going to do. And ultimately, we're going to get up here to Catawba, but it wants us in the morning to go back to Nashville and charge, and we don't want to do that. So I've been playing around and forcing some charging to maybe get a little bit of better spacing, a better timing. So what we'll do when we get up to our stop here in Smyrna, we will basically tell it to forget the superchargers, and that will tell us the length of time we need to get all the way from our hotel up to the next charging stop. And again, we need to make sure we leave a buffer in there because we're likely going to have a lower efficiency battery in the morning when things are cold. So we'll check it from the road, but this might change as things develop. All charged up, 77%. Says we're going to get to Kimball, which is one that I plugged in, which is just after Chattanooga, to give us some better spacing and some better food options. It says it'll be there with 38%, which is way more than we need, but it'll be about 7 o'clock, which will be a good time for us to grab some food somewhere for a late dinner. So check in from the road. Just got to the Kimball, Tennessee supercharger. That last leg, 86 miles, 313 watt-hours per mile, not too shabby. We got here with 36%, which is quite high state of charge, but just based on the spacing and when we wanted to stop and food options, this kind of worked out to be the best. So you got to kind of play around with the nav depending on what you need to do. So we're going to get charged here. We're going to run to Walmart, pick up some food. Probably going to take longer than it's going to take, and we'll just have a smaller charge when we get to our next stop, which is Smyrna, Tennessee. So let's get plugged in. We made it to Smyrna, Tennessee. That last leg was only 85 miles, 310 watt-hours per mile up and down through some of the Appalachian Mountains. And we are here, it says only for 5 minutes, but it is lying because we stopped here for a couple of reasons. First off, it's before Nashville. We didn't want to stop in Nashville proper due to the traffic and congestion that typically happens in Nashville. So we're just south of Nashville. The second thing is that our hotel is just on the other side of Nashville, and then it's a little bit further up the road to the next supercharger that we're going to have in the morning. And the problem is that the nav is saying that we're going to drive some distance to the Hampton Inn that we're staying at. And then in the morning, it wants us to come back to Nashville, go the opposite direction, charge up, and then head on. So we're not going to do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to tell the nav to ignore charging stops and see how long we need to sit here before we can actually have enough to get to the hotel, sit overnight, and then get to the next charger. So let's see what that looks like. All right, so you can see here that we have enough to actually get to our hotel with 29%, but it's going to have us come backwards to Tennessee in Nashville. It's going to have us come backwards to Nashville before heading on to Catawba. We don't want to do that, so we're just going to come down to the bottom and say remove all charging stops and see what it tells us. This is going to say how long do we need to charge before we can just go all the way to Catawba. Right now we're sitting here at -8%, so we're gonna have to sit here for a little while longer, even though it says 1 minute. Don't believe that. You want to stay here until the Catawba number gets up to a number that you feel comfortable with, and for me, that's about 20%, because when we wake up in the morning, battery pack is going to be cold, our efficiency is going to be lower, and we aren't going to arrive at Katawa at 20%. It's probably got to be somewhere between 10 to 15%, which is kind of in the range that we like to run in. So with that, once we get that done, then we should be able to turn the charging stops back on and have everything go back to normal. All right, quick check-in. We are charged up to 84%. We were able to turn the add chargers back on because we have charged up enough to get us to the hotel with 62% and to Katawa, Kentucky with 21%. So that should be enough, even if it sits overnight. Make sure we turn off Sentry mode and don't check the app, and we should get up in the morning with the same charge level as we have when we get there. But your battery pack's going to be cold, so you got to account for that. So this is enough. We'll get unplugged. Head on down the road. Well, we made it to the hotel for the night, which is just north of Nashville. Nashville's always fun, but we'll save the stats for the morning when we get to our supercharger, which is in Katawa. And the number to remember tonight is 24%. 24% is the number it says that we're going to arrive at Katawa tomorrow. But that's if we left right now when the battery's warm. So we'll check in the morning, give you an update on what's left on this trip, and we'll see just how far off that 24% we are. Otherwise, good night. Good morning from the hotel. Bright and early is our last day from just outside the Nashville area. We're going to be heading back to Iowa. And remember last night when we pulled into the hotel, I said the number to remember was 24%. That was the percentage that we were going to have for arrival at Katawa, our next supercharger stop. Well, as predicted, the number did drop, and it actually dropped a little bit more than I expected, because right now I'm looking at the destination percent and it's saying 13%. So that's 11%. That's significant. So you have to plan for that when you are staying overnight, especially when it's cold. Right now it's not terribly cold. It's 52 degrees down here, but it has a difference. It does make an impact. So we're going to get all packed up. We're going to grab some breakfast and we're going to hit the road, and we'll check in and I'll give you the stats at the next supercharger. Well, the car did something really annoying. We were planning on going to Katawa and I was on autopilot, and then all of a sudden the car just got off and went in a different direction and decided that, you know, we're going to arrive at Katawa with less than 10%. So, oh my God, we have to find a closer supercharger. And now it did something crazy. We're on a different road. We had to go 3 miles out of our way. I'm going to get off. I'm going to turn around. We're going to go back. We lost about 7 miles. 580 on the right. Which means now we're going to get to Katawa with 7%. This is frustrating. It's like the car has gotten really sensitive to just not allowing you to dip down below 10%, 12% for your destination. And that's, you know, I can see if you're new to EVing and you don't have a good tolerance for that, that's fine. But, you know, I've been doing this for a long time and I'm okay rolling into a charging stop with 5%, and it should let me do that, but oh well. Right now we're targeting getting to the supercharger with 7%, and see what happens when we get there. It's also worth noting that you might be thinking, well, you should have just been paying attention and you should have just canceled it. And the thing is that I had no warning. It happened right at an actual exit. It just decided to, at that moment in time, change my destination and get off. And unfortunately, I had to drive 3.5 miles before I could turn around. And frustrating. Look at that, we arrived with 8%, perfectly fine. That last leg was 137 miles, 340 watt hours per mile, contributed by the colder temperatures this morning, because that last drive was 362 watt hours per mile. And it was 8 miles further than it should have been because of that stupid detour. So anyway, we're gonna get plugged in. We're gonna be here, boy, it says 40 minutes. We may have to work on that. So we'll check in a bit. Well, I played around with the numbers, and whatever I did, it didn't seem to adjust our arrival time back home very much. So I ended up leaving it as is. I don't like doing a super deep charge at these superchargers, really long stops. But given the spacing and how we want to trade off driving so I can drive all the way through the St. Louis area, get to the other side before we can stop, it makes the most sense for us to stay here and sit and charge for the 35-40 minutes. That'll allow us to get to the Mount Vernon, Illinois supercharger, which is as close to St. Louis as we can get, and then it'll allow us to then completely bypass the St. Louis area altogether. So not ideal, but when you're in the Midwest, sometimes the spacing of superchargers really dictates when you have to stop. It's not about necessarily the range of the car and how far you can go, but it's oftentimes you just don't have enough range to skip a charger, and you just have to deal with what you have to deal with. So we're here for another 20 minutes, and we're currently at 60%. We're probably going to be close to 90% when we leave, but once we do that, we'll hit the road. We're all charged up. We're sitting at 92%. Still says that we were supposed to charge another 5 minutes. I don't get it because it says we're going to get to our destination with 20%. So we unplugged anyway, and we'll check in from the road. We just got to the Mount Vernon, Illinois supercharger with 25%. So we did not need to charge as much as we charged, and we did not need to wait. Nav can be a little inaccurate at times. So that last leg was 129 miles, 341 watt hours per mile. So even with a higher than average rate, we got here with much more than it said that we were going to. So it says we have about 20 minutes here, so let's go ahead and get plugged in. Just arrived at the Chesterfield, Missouri supercharger just west of St. Louis. That last leg, 102 miles, 360 watt hours per mile, which is a bit high, but we had a heck of a headwind. We did arrive with 11%. Remember when we left the last supercharger, it predicted probably 18, 19%. It was 11, but we're still fine. We're gonna get plugged in, and we're gonna be here about 20 minutes. We have arrived to our second to last supercharger before home. We are in Hannibal, Missouri. That last leg, 95 miles, 357 watt hours per mile. Two factors: it's still windy, and we've dropped temperatures as we're going north. We're at 43 degrees currently. So we're gonna get plugged in since we're gonna be here about 20 minutes, and then we'll make our way up into Iowa. All right, we're all charged up, a little overcharged maybe. Let's hit the road. Well, we made it to our last charging stop in Mount Pleasant, Iowa. The temperature is now 35 degrees Fahrenheit. Ouch. That last leg was only 95 miles, but it was 418 watt hours per mile because there is a really nasty headwind from the northwest that's cutting down our efficiency. So it's saying that we have to charge for about 15 minutes, and that should be enough, hopefully, to get us up to the Cedar Rapids, Iowa area, which is where we live. It's been a long day, but it's been a good road trip. Be happy to be home. Let's get plugged in. Well, trip is over. I'm in my garage just to finish things up on this trip. That last leg, 86 miles, 403 watt hours per mile, and overall this trip from Florida all the way up to Iowa totaled about 1,200 miles. But overall for spring break, this was a 3,200 mile trip, and our overall average watt hours consumed were 321. Not too shabby, pretty typical. So on this trip, we had a few new things to experience. We ran into, probably not the great use of words, a Cybertruck in southern Georgia. Very great couple, very generous with their time. It was so awesome to see a Cybertruck live. I hadn't seen one since I've been down to Austin. And halfway through this trip, we got FSD 12.3, and we used it for the last approximately 1,000 miles-ish, 800 miles. And overall, it did a really good job. There's a separate video on that. Check it out. So hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, I'd appreciate hitting the like button. And if you're new to the channel, subscriptions are always welcome. And if you're looking to pick up a Tesla of your own, and I would highly recommend it, make sure you use a referral link. Any referral link will do. If you want to use one that's below, that would be great. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll catch you on the next video.